Hello everyone, welcome back to another unmasked video by Mr. Dancer and his Magic Mask. If you're looking for a film this weekend, this is the place to be. This weekend, I will be watching some movies because there's some special screenings at my film archive. I also need to get a mic stand because I'm still holding my mic. We'll see if I get motivated enough to leave my room.
To jsem totiž ještě pořád nebyl živ. Až za chvíli to udělalo.
For those who are thinking about having a wild drinking party this weekend, but sometimes daydream about what if alcohol gave you the hangover first and then the euphoria later? Because if you're someone like me, you actually kind of like the vomiting feeling. You just don't want it at the end of the experience.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Alright. Let me quickly reword that for the normies. If you're looking to have a sort of party in reverse, I would like to recommend the film Happy End to you. Released in 1967 and directed by Oldřich Lipský, this film is part of the infamous Czech New Wave. Plot-wise, this film is rather simple. It's about a man who ends up murdering his wife, and sort of explains why he's done it. Nothing really special about that, honestly. However, the film is stylistically extremely unique. Everything in this film is in reverse order. What I mean is, every single character is walking backwards, they jump out of the water, and they spit out their food instead of eating it. In fact, Happy End actually starts off with The End intertitle. You could say Happy End is a film that's one big gimmick, but it's pretty obvious that Lipsky's really intentional in everything he's filming. Lipský really takes advantage of things that would look funny backwards. This ends up creating a weirdly dark film that's very funny, because the film is about a man murdering his wife, but because it's filmed in reverse order, it's told as if the man is coming back to life. Some of my favorite scenes include the man putting his wife back together, since he's now unkilling her, or this scene where he takes out a fishbone from her throat to unchoke her. There's a lot of incredibly funny dialogue in this film too. Let's take a look at one of the first dialogue scenes in the film.
Jedno.
Měl nějaké děti?
5:17.
Kolik je hodin?
Technically, you're supposed to be understanding the dialogue bottom to top, so 5:17 answers what's the time. However, since the film is in reverse order, when you listen to the film, you get some funny dialogue. Just like how one of the guards asks, "Has he got any children?" And the response is 5:17. This happens throughout the entire film, and there are some incredibly funny moments because of it. In order for the film to make sense, the main character is sort of a narrator in this film that explains the film's reverse order in his own chronology. The first scene where the main character is in a prison, he explains that as if it's his childhood, and he'll keep explaining things that don't make sense really with what you see on screen, except that he's building a story. But the narrator adds an extra layer of comedy, especially since he's usually just as confused as we are. As we've seen in the dialogue, he has one child, but he doesn't remember who this child is because we've never met the child before in the film. When the child is introduced, he thinks to himself, "Did I just not notice?" I also like the part where the narrator has to explain why his wedding night is over, and he goes, "It wasn't easy to return her virginity." You get a sort of two narrative stories that are happening at the same time, and you'll probably be switching between both understandings of the film throughout your viewing experience. If this is the first time you're watching this film, I recommend not trying to think too hard about all that stuff. It will melt your brain. For me, this film is a great party film, as this film has a lot of sort of gimmicky stuff to it. It really is a great film to have a drinking game to. This next party you're having, put on Happy End and get extremely drunk to it. Your brain's already going to be melted, so... Next, I have a wonderful two-part episaga for you people who want to wrap yourselves in blankets this weekend. The two films are The Immigrants and its sequel, The New Land. Both films are 3 hours long, so it will be a long time you don't get out of bed. But for the true slackers, I believe that means that's actually perfect. These two Swedish films are directed by Troell, and they are an adaptation of a novel series called The Immigrants by the Swedish author Vilhelm Moberg. The two films are about a Swedish peasant family during the mid-19th century. The two films basically follow their lives as they get sick of the poverty in Sweden and decide to go to America. The American dream, you know. The two main leads of this family are acted by Max von Sydow and Liv Ullmann, the two faces of Swedish cinema basically. While both films are about the epic saga of one family, they do kind of provide two different types of that epic saga story. The Immigrants is mostly about their journey, so you'll see the family go on a boat and do a lot more traveling in America to reach the land that they want to reach. A New Land, on the other hand, is more about their lives in America after they've settled, how they adapt to the new life, what parts of their dreams actually realize, and which parts become disillusionment. Helped by this film's cinematography, which I can only describe as lush, this film really is a true adventure. Once you get through the whole 6 hours, it really feels like you've lived 1,000 lives. I felt extremely comfy with this film because of how strongly I felt for this family and how much I rooted for them. The characters' reactions to all the trials are very in-depth, which is one of the reasons why you feel so a part of it. Their hopes and dreams, the people they meet, the friends they make, and the enemies they create. Just think about it. This was considered actually a new land for these people. Their genuine shock and excitement towards this sort of completely new place is very, very relatable in a way. Of course, my experiences will never relate as much to theirs, but it still reminds me of those moments where I independently go somewhere to explore and find something that I really, really treasure and get really excited about. It's a really good feeling. Of course, today we know that understanding America as a new land was completely problematic. In the new land, the family has to go through certain events that create huge disillusionment, like the Gold Rush, the Civil War, and the Dakota War of 1862. A great example of this is the parallels between Liv Ullmann's reaction to America and Max von Sydow's. Von Sydow is way more proud and happy about the house he built, the actual land he bought. Ullmann, on the other hand, misses Sweden greatly, and she has to find ways to adapt her American life to still retain some of that Swedish pride she holds so dearly to her. Another great example is when the family splits apart. Some of them leave for the gold rush, and their stories are all different. Many of them come back to the home, failing to achieve what they wanted. The fact is, these two films are an incredible amount of small little stories of different results, filling you with multiple of different types of emotions all at once in one single presence. There's this one scene where a doctor tells a family that they can't have children anymore. For this family, suddenly the option becomes only let's never have sex, or let's have sex and say fuck it and see if we die. May God help us. Kind of like a mayfly or an octopus, right? It's single stories like these that speak so much about how the world then was understood, but they're also the building blocks to our world today, and we can't forget that. It's a human legacy that remains problematic, but still beautiful, because there's just this power that's so overwhelming and grand. Something so big you can't really touch. A sublime feeling, basically. And I really find that feeling very comfortable to overwhelm yourself with in bed. Perhaps the best way to express how comfy I felt this film is, this is the only story where I've ever rooted for white people to take land from another country. That's saying something. For those looking to golf up a little this weekend and dress very sad, let's recommend one of the OG evil sex styles in cinema. Les Vampires is directed by Louis Feuillade and released in 1915. It's a serial film, which means even though it's 7 hours long, it's divided into 10 chapters, and it was meant to be seen that way actually too. This means you don't have to feel overwhelmed and feel that you have to watch this whole film all in one go. The history for what a serial film is pretty interesting too, but let's save that for another time. Les Vampires is about two journalists who start to uncover a terrible underground crime organization called Les Vampires. These two journalists slowly start to find out how all-encompassing this crime organization really is as the film goes. Throughout the whole film, you get to meet a bunch of characters who grow into their own sort of relevancy into the plot. Seemingly irrelevant moments in the beginning start to make sense as the film goes on. The film isn't really an epic though, it's still quite contained despite its length. It's also not really a deep movie, and really is just a fun crime sort of story to sit back and relax to. I get it though. If you wanted to be treated seriously about being a brooding Dark Lord, you might be a little annoyed I suggested a sort of dated and a little bit of a comedic film. However, I think it's important to know that there's a reason why you're attracted to darkness. And Les Vampires is one of the greatest films and examples of that sort of darkness attractivity. So even if there are a lot of thrilling creativity ideas that feel kind of dated today, there's still a great visual experience, and they do inspire something. You can really fall in love with that old-fashioned style of darkness in Les Vampires. It's still kind of unique and retains a lot of charm. Les Vampires' gadgets and schemes are in a similar vein. Kind of like why people are still obsessed with James Bond, you know? The gadgets are awkward, but they're still kind of funny and cute. Of course, in Les Vampires, they're probably a little more dated, but it's still fun to see what people thought looked secretive and brooding back in the days. You can't really talk about Les Vampires without talking about Musidora's Irma Vep. She is by far the most memorable character in this film. She really is made to be the girl that you're falling in love with. Her antics are cute despite being sinister. Musidora also wears most of the memorable costumes and styles that we remember from Les Vampires. The aesthetic she presents is basically kind of the epitome of an alluring darkness. Maybe even kind of cute. I guess kind of like baby metal. In many ways, Les Vampires doesn't even start as a film until Irma Vep's plot starts getting going. So those are going to be the 4 films I recommend this week. Check them out, let me know how you like them, and leave a comment below about them too. These weekly videos, I never get too in-depth into each video, but I'm excited to talk about any film more in depth if you want. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to share it, like and subscribe. I can't wait to start my weekend too with some sick films, like Zombie Fight Club. Yeah, I might not just be watching the film.